Excellent. Welcome to the very first ever episode of DTNsights. I am the host, Renny Vandewege. Just as a little background, I am the General Manager of Weather and Climate Intelligence at DTN. And this is literally episode 1 and a really exciting thing that we're starting at DTN, where we just want an opportunity to showcase our people, some of our products, the industries we work in, and our customers, but just create a fun environment to talk with some of the awesome people that we have inside of DTN. And given it's episode 1, who we picked for the first episode ever was an important decision. And I am thrilled with who we've come up with for our very first guest on DTNsights. I'm going to bring him into the conversation here. I would like to welcome everybody. Ben Hershey. Ben, you won the award. You drew the short straw to be the first ever guest on DTNsights. I'm so glad that you agreed to join us.
No problem. Thanks, Renny. I'm excited to be the first candidate of this, and looking forward to hopefully setting the bar high, and then everyone else can come in over the top. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, officially Ben serves as a portfolio product manager at DTN. Your focus areas are on transportation and event safety. We're going to focus mostly on the transportation side of things today. But as we kind of get started, I would love to just learn a little bit about your journey in your career, where you went to school, and sort of what led you to where you are today in your career.
Yeah. So, weather has always been an interest for me. So many of us at DTN, right, with that weather background, there's always those things that happen when either you're younger or as you get older that really draw you into the weather field specifically. And for me, it was 2 events. The 91 snowstorm in the Twin Cities, the Halloween blizzard obviously was one of those things, but the other one was the 1987, what they call the superstorm, and we got about 13 to 15 inches of rain in the Minneapolis area growing up there as a kid. And so I went to school at the University of North Dakota and went into meteorology, and then I had an opportunity to stay there and actually work on my master's degree. So was very much focused on that. But I got to kind of take some of my roots actually from my father, who worked actually in a municipality in the Minneapolis area. And he was responsible for the water and sewer for the town, but he was also involved with the snow and ice removal. So it was like a really cool marriage going to the University of North Dakota, having that weather background, and then getting to work with the Department of Transportation. So knowing what my dad went through in that operational space, but bringing some science to their operational challenges. And so that was what I worked on in my master's degree, and it just kind of evolved from there and continued in that realm of providing weather and intelligence to an operational setting. So having that operational understanding, that 24/7 idea, and how important that is to make decisions for their operations. So that's kind of how I got going. It was kind of a perfect case scenario, being at the University of North Dakota and looking at their transportation weather activities that they were just kicking off when I started my education career.
Yeah. So first job then out of your master's, how did you kind of get into this world of private weather sector and serving industry with weather information?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I didn't have to interview, but only once, and it was at Meridian Environmental Technology. So it was a really cool opportunity in the fact that my advisor and professor at the University of North Dakota, Leon Osborne, had started a company called Meridian Environmental Technology. And at that time in the mid-2000s, they were looking to expand the transportation aspect of the company, right? So we were working a lot on 511 and advanced traveler information, but this new idea of maintenance decision support had come about in about 2002, and the opportunity was to grow that in 2006. So they had opened up a position. I didn't know this at the time, but obviously afterwards, Leon told me, he goes, "Yeah, I saw you in that role 3-4 years before you were even in that role," and had kind of groomed me to be in that position, which is pretty exciting when your mentor does that for you. And so I interviewed over at Meridian while I was finishing up my master's degree. And I'll never forget the interview. It was an hour and a half. It was a grill session, but it was really cool that, I took it, I tried to take it as seriously as I could. And so the people that interviewed me, one of them was Dr. John Muse, who's with DTN still today, more on the ag side, but worked directly with him. And so when I started my career, my first job was a road weather specialist, and I worked for John Muse and was responsible for our day-to-day support and overall kind of the back end support and then the front end support, not so much on the actual weather forecasting, but all the other pieces that go into providing a service. So much like our CSMs do here at DTN.
Yeah, and then how did you ultimately end up at DTN?
Yeah, so we went through some changes, obviously, at Meridian. We got acquired by a company called Iteris in 2011, and we went through that acquisition process, and then in the late 2010s, that Iteris was looking at a way to try to grow our ag and weather business over at on the Iteris side, and ultimately it came that DTN was interested in acquiring the entire division from Iteris. And so I got to be part of that team, got to really see how that all integrated, and ultimately became part of the DTN family in May of 2020, a pretty unique time within our entire world, and the fact that it was in the middle of a pretty major pandemic. So Renny, like you and I, we talked several times even before and afterwards, and it was almost 6 to 8 months into being with DTN that we actually got to shake each other's hands in person, right? So it was a very interesting time to become part of the DTN family, a lot of changes, but overall it's been a great experience.
Well, and I can tell you, I mean, the world was stressed at that time. We had this pandemic going on. Nobody knew what in the world was happening, right? And were we safe to be outside and around people? And so you had that stress, and then it's stressful to get acquired. And I remember about that time, Ben, you having such a tremendous attitude, and you and the team, and coming in, and we figured out a way to make it work, which was a really interesting learning. You brought up that as a kid, right, you got interested in weather, you had these impactful weather events. If I stepped you back in time to when you were like, say, 17, and you're making the decision to go to college, what did you think your career in weather was going to become relative to what it is now?
Right. Well, because you don't have a lot of exposure of what else is out there in the weather field, you see the people on television, right? So, I mean, I'll be honest, I saw myself as potentially being on TV. And I realized, though, when I was 18 and early 19, that wasn't going to happen, right? So it was very quickly from when I was graduating high school to when I started my college career that there was more opportunity in the weather field than just in broadcast meteorology. But for anybody that's watching this from the Twin Cities area that had been around for a while, I used to watch Rusty Gatenby, right? He was the guy. He was the traffic and weather guy. So it's kind of cool. Now I do traffic and weather stuff, right? So even though I'm not the face of that on the TV, I like to think I can be part of the face of that here at DTN. And so, that was ultimately what, initially I went into. And I think a lot of meteorologists as kids probably think of that because that's what you see. But it's been a really cool opportunity to recognize how broad the weather community is and all of the knowledge we gain and what we can do, and not just be the TV meteorologist.
Weather touches so many things, and I have the exact same story as you. I thought I was going to be a TV meteorologist my whole life. I actually did that for a couple years, realized that you're supposed to look prettier than I do to be on TV, but somehow managed somehow managed to do that for a period of time, and it was a really cool experience. But I agree, and I think that's an important aspect for our universities. If we have any professors or any students that might be viewing this, understanding and listening and learning to the different opportunities. There's so many cool applications of weather that solve business. That's why we're hosting a show like this, is to bring to light some of that.
Yep.
So so you've got about 20 plus years now, right? Working a lot of that in kind of the road weather space. I'm curious, how have you seen weather information and solutions change in that time from when you started your career to sort of the state of the world today and providing that information? How have you seen that change, especially in sort of the transport space?
Yeah, so you look at weather, just like our technology ourselves is when we were, I mean, when I first started applying for schools, you know, you had an email address and you could actually send an email to send your high school resume in. Well, now everything's on your phone, right? So we've watched the transportation industry follow that, right? They've used that technology, and so much of the information is at the touch of the fingers of the decision maker, right? And so the other thing that we've seen is that as a change in culture, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, is that there's a lot of experience that has walked out the door in these companies and in these agencies and the customers we work with, right? And so the idea of having somebody that is got that 30, 40, 50 years of experience is no longer there, right? And so they're reliant on somebody else to provide valuable information about what to do in specific situations. You don't have that operator anymore that said, well, yeah, 25 years ago we had this storm event and it kind of did this, and this one's sounding like the same way, so we should be prepared for this. It doesn't work that way anymore. And so, you know, we've seen where our value of information has really helped those agencies and those supervisors that are 2, 3, 4 years into their role and don't have the 10, 15, 20 years of experience that somebody else might have had going into the career back in the day. And so you see a lot more of that change, you know, and I think as we look forward to what, you know, potentially AI and ML will do, it'll be interesting. But I will say that you still have to, at this point, have an operator in that truck. You still have to do the winter maintenance. So some of the core things are still there. And that's what's kind of really good about what we're doing is we still have the core, but we're bringing that technology and you know, the mobile phones and everything are part of that. It's definitely noticeable.
Yeah, in terms of some of the sort of diving into a little of the details here, what are some of those key decisions of the customers that your products serve and that you interact with? What are the key decisions that our customers are trying to make, and how does DTN ultimately really try to solve those?
Yes. So when we look at the transportation space as we define it at DTN, and I'm going to be very focused on more of our what we call our government customers, which would be our state departments of transportation, cities and counties here in the U.S., provincial governments in Canada, and then ultimately a lot of our government customers in Europe. The value add or what we bring that's very much differentiated based on just going to a website and looking at the weather forecast, right? There's so much of that data out there. It's what's going to happen on the roadway. And it's kind of cliche, but ultimately there is a difference between how the road responds to just basic weather information. And so really the key differentiation or the key decision points for them, especially for our European customers, are when is that pavement temperature going to drop below freezing, right? When is it going to drop below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius? And then how do they respond to it? How long is it going to be there? How cold is it going to get? And then ultimately then providing them information of how to effectively respond in that situation. So do they need to use a lot of material, or they can use a little bit less material? Here in the US and across Canada, obviously we deal a lot more with snow events that drive that decision making. So for those customers, and we see it in Europe as well, so I don't want to say we don't, but really it's about when does that precipitation start and when does it begin to impact the pavement itself, right? So if it's going to snow out, but it's going to stay above freezing at the pavement temperature and it's only going to be wet, you know, can they do less work? And so, you know, we talk about the value of what we provide of being able to be as effective with their chemicals and their resources and their communication up and down the chain, right? And so how do they tell their bosses and their staff when they need to be there, how much chemical to use, and at what time do they use that chemical to be the most efficient they can be? And you can't get that just from going out on the web. That's where that value add of the science that we have and the expertise. If you look across DTN, we have so much experience with those type of customers. And so the risk communication piece of this is so cool that we have that expertise. We've had guys that have plowed snow, but in the snow plows with them and sat down with the individuals at lunch during snow events, whatever it may be, to understand their true problems that they deal with. And so that's a real unique aspect of what DTN brings to this industry.
Yeah, there's the element of, yep, we can forecast the weather. We do it daily. We do it really well. But so what does it matter to you, right? And how do I take that information and make really smart decisions and optimize the operations, optimize the finances of the operations, and keep people safe? There's so many different angles to that. Also, one of the things that's been interesting is we've been part of a really unique kind of pooled fund study with many of those state governments and in the DOTs. I'm curious your perspective. You know, we've been very proud of that relationship. How have you seen that collaboration be important in terms of creating innovation, or maybe even your learning as well?
Yes. So the maintenance decision support system pool fund study, which was started in 2002, we've been part of that since day one. It was part of Meridian, then transitioned to Iteris, and now part of DTN. And so, you know, it was honestly one of the first on-site presentations I ever had to give in my career. Was in 2006, right? So in front of all of these experts, right? Then I've got to talk to them, and so that was, you know, a little bit challenging, nerve-wracking. It was a great way to kick off my career. But from a standpoint of what it's meant for us is that these group of states have come together to help us define where they want to go. And so it's a lot of what we do today when we talk to our customers, right? We're doing customer discovery. We're trying to get feedback. Here we have, at any given time, we've had upwards of 16. We're at about 9 states right now that are part of that group. And so they are giving us feedback of, here are my problems. Here's what I need information to help solve. And so instead of having to go to individual agencies, we got all of them in the room together. And while they all have their unique problems for their individual agency, we've been able to build and continue to refine a solution that meets all of their needs, right? And so at times that can be challenging, but it has really been a real positive for us. The other really unique thing is the goal initially was to build a solution that provided them road weather information to make sound decisions. We could have stuck a flag in the sand and said, yep, we were done with that 15 years ago, but we've recognized, and the agencies have recognized, there's more to what we need to do. So we're doing so much more than what the initial charter was. And that's what's really exciting about it, is that as technology has grown, the mobile app side of things, data inside the truck has become more and more ubiquitous across all of these trucks themselves, that this project still provides value and provides an opportunity for, one, the states to pool their funds together, but two, to build a common solution that can meet all of their unique needs. And so it's a really cool opportunity for others outside of the transportation space. You know, think of it as a customer advisory board, but they're paying in to be part of it. So it's a really cool, unique opportunity. And we value their feedback and provide that. And what's also neat about it is DTN has a seat at the table. So we may not have a vote of what we're building. We definitely have a way to bring ideas to the table of what we've seen across all of the agencies that have really driven that decision-making process that we have within the project.
Yeah, it's such a unique way to bring, you know, industry thought leaders together, understand real problems, and discuss how to best innovate. And I think, as you said, it's in some regards, it's not even just bringing the data into the truck. Sometimes it's getting data from the truck and letting that be an influential feedback loop into the insights and utilizing that technology. Well, you know, given your expertise and relationships, you had a cool opportunity recently to present at the American Meteorological Society. For those who don't know what that is our biggest sort of professional group of meteorologists that get together. It brings together somewhere between like 5,000 and 6,000 professionals around the world to talk weather research, and you had the great honor to get to present. What was the topic of that discussion? What were some of the key learnings that you shared with the audience there?
Yeah, so I actually had 2 presentations, which was really cool. And so the first one I'll mention is we spoke about the risk communicator information that we provide through a project called Pathfinder, which was started by the Federal Highway Administration almost 10 years ago. And both DTN and Iteris, so back in the day when we were competitive, we're part of the group together, right? That started that. So DTN had involvement with Pathfinder, and so did Iteris, and now as one team. And so myself, along with co-authors of Rob Pernard, Kevin Mahoney Jr., and Stuart Carpenter, we were able to present on what we provide from the private sector, from a risk communication to the DOTs when they're making decisions out on the roadway. And what Pathfinder is really designed to do is it's designed to be a collaboration between the National Weather Service or the federal agency, the DOTs themselves, and then the private weather contractors that are there to provide a joint message of the impact to the traveler. So it's not about coordination of DOT staff. It's not about that. It's really not even about the weather. While the weather drives what that communication looked like, ultimately what it is it's a communication of what is the impact of the weather going to have on the road and to the traveler, right? When are they going to start to see impacts? For example, right now we're dealing with blowing snow conditions across the area where I live. They have those communications of what is that impact to the driver, reduce visibility, slow down, those type of things. And so we talked about that on the Pathfinder side. And so that really highlights our risk communicator solution that we provide to our state departments of transportation. And then the second presentation was specifically on the MDSS pool fund study with the co-authors of Sean Trulson from DTN, and then Dave Huff from the South Dakota Department of Transportation, who leads their ITS group, which stands for Intelligent Transportation Systems. And it was an overview of the MDSS project that we talked about and where our research is today. Everything from doing an assessment of what we call assessment of recommendations. So we get feedback from the operators in the field if they agree with the information we're providing or not. And so it provide a little bit of a scope and view of the current project of where we are at today. So it was a really cool opportunity to be able to present on both of those in that forum.
That's awesome, and congratulations.
Thank you.
It is a big honor. It's hard to get a presentation at that conference, and to have two is a really tremendous honor. Well, we're going to wrap up with a new segment. Every segment's new because this is a brand new show.
This is the first one, right?
I've decided to call it Heat Burst, which is where we are going to bring some rapid fire questions, and just got 5 of them for you here. So we'll go pretty quickly here. So what is your favorite thing about working for DTN?
The everyday different challenge we have, and it's all positive, but it's every day. You never know where you might be working on things. And for me personally, it's the opportunity of working with teams across the globe. I mean, last night I had a call with Australia. Today I'm having calls with our teams in the Philippines and in Europe, and then also here in North America. So for me, it's that global impact that we have at DTN.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I often say this. When I started my weather career, I had no idea that I would get to talk about weather on such a scale like this, right? I always thought, when you talk about TV, you're talking about 15 counties locally, and you thought you'd be an expert at that. I completely agree with you. Speaking of that global point of view, what's the coolest place you've been able to travel for work?
So there's a couple. I have gotten to go to the top of Mount Washington in New Hampshire, so that's pretty cool as a weather person, right? Some of the craziest weather that you can have. I've also had an opportunity to go to Fairbanks, Alaska, to speak on our weather capabilities. But honestly, for me, it's been the opportunity of going over and meeting with our team over in the Utrecht office, and the fact that I had never traveled to Europe prior to joining DTN, and just getting to be immersed in somebody else's culture is probably one of the coolest things I've gotten to do. And so I've really cherished my times over there. I haven't gotten to sightsee as much as I obviously would love to, but ultimately just working with the staff we have over there has been it's been an honor. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so what is your must-have food recommendation for when you've traveled in the past? What's like the best meal you found on the road?
Well, Well, Renny, to be honest, I grew up in Minnesota. I live in North Dakota, so the meat and potatoes, that's kind of the staple when you grow up in our area.
You
So
could tell looking at us, right?
right,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? It's just a meat and potatoes kind of thing. So I'm trying to
Yep.
figure out where I've had one of my best steaks. But one of the meals that does come out that comes in, I can't even remember the name of the restaurant, but we were in Connecticut and we were at a sushi place and we had just some amazing sushi and we had some turbo and we paid for it ourselves, but it was not a cheap meal and it was a lot of fun. So, I'm all about trying new things. We had a really cool went to an Indian restaurant when we were in Utrecht this last time I was over there. And so I'm all about trying the new stuff, but again, kind of the meat potatoes kind of guy at home for sure.
Absolutely. You mentioned a couple events that were impactful for you, but what is the wildest weather event that you've ever experienced personally?
Yeah, so those two obviously were when I was a kid. There's been two in my life that really stand out. One was a summer weather event. We were storm chasing out in western South Dakota and made some rookie mistakes and got into a gust front with winds over about 90 to 100 miles an hour. Ended up spending the afternoon in the basement of some very nice people that were on a road out in the middle of nowhere and watched their grain bins blow away. So that was one event that definitely I'll never forget and pretty crazy. And then the other one was a blizzard event with also very strong winds of almost 65, 70 miles an hour just south of my house. And as some people know, I'm a volunteer firefighter in the spare time when I can. And we were out there actually dealing with some people that got stranded. And it was a kind of a life-threatening situation. We couldn't see the road and we couldn't see where we were at. And so those two events kind of still stick out in my mind from a weather standpoint. I'll never forget those.
Yeah, man, the raw power of weather is unbelievable.
Just
And when,
crazy, isn't it?
not that you want to get yourself in some of those situations. You mentioned rookie storm, storm chasing. We all learn somehow, and you get into some experience. You're like, I didn't know ice could be that big.
Right.
Hitting my car, that's a problem. Okay, we've talked a lot about your work, a lot about your passions and learning, but I'm curious your favorite things to do outside of work.
Well, I love to hunt and fish. So anybody that knows me, I love to be in the outdoors. And it's one of the reasons why I continue to live in North Dakota, where it provides me those opportunities. And obviously, I love spending time with my family. So, but if my wife and I have time to get away, the two of us, right? We love to travel. So we've gotten to do that a few times. Our favorite place, we got to go to Hawaii on our 10-year anniversary. That's huge. That was a lot of fun. But my kids, and they're heavily involved in sports and involved in school. So we support them. We are a hockey family. So for those that understand what that means, we travel a lot, but we do a lot for them. And so outside of the work, if it's not with the kids or with the wife, I'm probably trying to hunt or fish somewhere across the region. Those are my passions for sure.
I can confirm your success at that after having tried some of the jerky that you've harvested in the past.
And that's one of the things I love to share, just because not everyone gets that opportunity, and I love to share when I can, definitely. Yep.
Well, Ben, you have been the perfect and most awesome first guest we could have on DTN Insights. I so appreciate your time sharing some about your background and honestly, on behalf of the business, just your passion for our customers and ensuring that we're always being the best we can and providing value. You've been a great colleague to work with, and so glad that you joined our company right in the middle of COVID. So really appreciate you joining us today.
No problem. Thanks, Renny. I appreciate it. I look forward to the next episodes and everybody else that gets an opportunity here. So again, thanks, Renny.
Excellent. Well, that is it for our first episode of DTNsights. Again, thanks to Ben Hershey for joining us, and thankful for you joining us and listening a little bit about the stories. We will have some great content coming down the line, some interesting insights into what DTN is up to, what our people are up to, and certainly what our customers are up to. So thanks again for watching. You can always visit DTN.com to learn more about our products and services, or reach out to me on various social media channels, including LinkedIn. Thanks again for joining. Have a great day.